The glass tower. Nikolai Vance stood at the edge of his penthouse balcony, 48 floors above San Francisco. The evening fog rolled in beneath him, obscuring the streets, but leaving the tops of neighboring skyscrapers visible like islands in a cotton sea. His engagement party hummed behind him, soft jazz, tinkling crystal, and the perfectly modulated laughter of 200 of the city's most influential people. "There you are." Vivian's voice carried the slight musical lilt that had first caught his attention at a tech conference in Milan. "Everyone's asking where you've disappeared to." Nikolai turned to face his fiancée. Vivian Winters was objectively stunning, tall and graceful with auburn hair falling in perfect waves and a dress that probably cost more than what most people earned in a month. She was intelligent, connected, and moved through high society, with the same ease that Nikolai navigated business acquisitions. "Just needed some air," he said, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Shall we go back in?" Vivian studied him for a moment before nodding. "The governor just arrived. And that venture capitalist you wanted to speak with, Elliot?" "Something?" "Hammond," Nikolai supplied, already shifting mental gears. "Perfect timing." As they walked back into the party, Nikolai felt Vivian's hand slip into his, a practiced gesture they'd perfected for public appearances. It wasn't that their relationship was fake. It was efficient, compatible. They made sense together on paper. Both were driven, successful, and understood the value of strategic partnerships. Romance, in Nikolai's experience, was largely overrated anyway. The party continued exactly as planned, a meticulously orchestrated affair reflecting Vivian's talent for creating experiences that photographed beautifully for social media. Their engagement had already been featured in several business and lifestyle magazines, heralding them as the power couple to watch. "Nikolai, congratulations!" Elliot Hammond approached, champagne in hand. "Quite the celebration, and I hear the wedding will be even more spectacular." "Vivian has remarkable vision," Nikolai replied diplomatically. "Speaking of vision," Hammond lowered his voice. "Have you considered my proposal about the neural interface expansion? The military applications alone could—" "I'd prefer to discuss that after the regulatory approvals," Nikolai interrupted smoothly. "Tonight's about celebration, not business." But business was always there, woven into every interaction. Every conversation at the party eventually circled back to investments, opportunities, or the latest valuation of Vance Technologies. Nikolai had built his empire from nothing, a coding prodigy from a middle-class family who'd developed revolutionary AI systems that transformed industries. At 36, he was worth over $11 billion. Later, as the last guests departed, Nikolai found himself alone again on the balcony. Vivian had left for her own apartment downtown. She preferred to maintain separate residences until after the wedding, something about tradition and appearances. The silence felt both welcome and hollow. Nikolai gazed at the city lights emerging, as the fog thinned. Success had given him everything he'd ever worked for: influence, security, respect. So why did it sometimes feel like he was observing his life through glass, never quite touching anything real? His phone buzzed. A message from Vivian. "The party was perfect. The Times will run our feature tomorrow." "Oh, and don't forget my friend Freya arrives tomorrow. She'll be staying at the Fairmont. Coffee at 2? Nikolai texted back his agreement, vaguely recalling mention of this childhood friend who'd been traveling for work. The maid of honor, apparently. He set his phone down and returned to the skyline, wondering why the prospect of his wedding felt more like closing a business deal than beginning a life together. An unexpected honesty. The Fairmont Hotel's garden terrace buzzed with San Francisco's elite enjoying afternoon refreshments. Nikolai arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, spotting Vivian's distinctive auburn hair at a corner table. She wasn't alone. "Nikolai, finally," Vivian waved him over. Come meet my oldest friend in the world. The woman sitting across from Vivian turned, and Nikolai felt an unexpected jolt. Freya Bennett had none of his fiancé's polished glamour. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple knot, her face free of makeup except for a hint of something on her lips. She wore a well-worn leather jacket over a simple blouse, and when she stood to greet him, he noticed her eyes, a striking shade of amber that caught the sunlight. "The famous Nikolai Vance," she said, her smile genuine but reserved. "Viv's told me so much about you." Her handshake was firm, her gaze direct. No trace of the usual awe or calculation he encountered in first meetings. "Freya just got back from Borneo," Vivian explained. "She's been photographing orangutans for National Geographic." "That sounds fascinating," Nikolai said, meaning it. "More interesting than software patents, certainly," Freya laughed, a sound entirely different from the carefully modulated social laughs he'd grown accustomed to. "Don't sell yourself short. Viv says your neural interfaces could revolutionize medical treatment." "They could," he agreed, "if we prioritize that application over more profitable ones." Something flickered in Freya's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at his candor. The conversation flowed unexpectedly easily. Freya asked intelligent questions about his work without the usual sycophancy. When she spoke of her own projects, conservation efforts in Southeast Asia, her passion was palpable. She'd spent the last decade traveling to remote locations, documenting endangered species and the communities fighting to protect them. "Don't let her fool you with this humble photographer act," Vivian interjected. "Freya's work has influenced international conservation policy. She just won't admit it." Freya shrugged. "I just point the camera. The animals do the real work." As the afternoon progressed, Nikolai found himself increasingly intrigued. Freya challenged him in ways few people dared. When he mentioned a recent business decision, she asked, not about profit margins, but about its impact on local communities. When he described his new building project, she wondered about its environmental footprint rather than its architectural prestige. "You're not what I expected," he admitted, as Vivian excused herself to take a call. "Oh? What did you expect?" Freya asked, her head tilted slightly. Nikolai considered his words carefully. "Someone more like Vivian, I suppose?" "We balance each other out," Freya said. "She teaches me to appreciate beautiful things. I remind her that some beautiful things can't be bought." She smiled. "That's how friendship works best, don't you think? Complementary perspectives." When Vivian returned, she was all business. "Wedding planner crisis. The venue needs decisions on lighting installations today." She gathered her things. "Freya, dinner at 8? We need to finalize your maid of honor dress." After Vivian departed in a flurry of calls and texts, an awkward silence fell between Nikolai and Freya. "I should probably," he began. "Before you go," Freya interrupted. "I have something for you." She reached into her battered messenger bag and pulled out a small wrapped package. "A belated engagement gift." Nikolai unwrapped it to find a framed photograph, a single perfect moment, capturing a young orangutan reaching toward the camera, curiosity and intelligence evident in its eyes. "I took this on my last trip," Freya explained. "This little one had been rescued from poachers. Despite everything humans had done to his family, he still reached out with trust." She paused. "I thought someone building the future might appreciate a reminder of what we're trying to save." Looking at the photograph, Nikolai felt something shift inside him, a crack in the careful compartmentalization of his life. "Thank you," he said quietly. "This is the most thoughtful gift I've received in a very long time." Freya's smile reached her eyes, creating small creases at the corners. "You're welcome, Nikolai Vance. I hope you find a good spot for him." As she left, Nikolai remained seated, the photograph in his hands, wondering why a simple picture from A woman he'd just met had affected him more deeply than any of the expensive gestures that typically filled his world. Reflections in the garden. The weeks before the wedding unfolded in a whirlwind of preparations. Nikolai found himself increasingly removed from the process, nodding agreement to Vivienne's carefully curated choices while his mind wandered elsewhere. The photograph from Freya sat on his desk, drawing his attention during late-night work sessions. He encountered Freya again at the Botanical Gardens, where he'd retreated to escape a particularly tedious meeting with wedding caterers. She was photographing hummingbirds, so absorbed in her work she didn't notice him approach. "That looks more challenging than orangutans," Nikolai commented, causing her to startle slightly. "Nikolai, you move quietly for a billionaire," she said, lowering her camera. "And yes, these little speedsters are testing my patience today." They walked together through the garden's winding paths. Without Vivienne's mediating presence, their conversation deepened. Freya spoke of growing up with Vivienne in Connecticut, the wealthy friend who'd always shared her privileges, the complicated dynamics of their friendship. "Viv was always destined for the spotlight," Freya explained. "Even at 10, she organized neighborhood fashion shows where she was invariably the star. And you were?" The kid with the camera, documenting everything from behind the scenes. Her smile turned reflective. "Some patterns establish early." Nikolai found himself sharing things he rarely discussed. His working-class childhood, the scholarship that changed his trajectory, the loneliness that sometimes accompanied success. "Do you ever miss it?" Freya asked as they paused by a koi pond. "The simplicity of before the money?" Nikolai watched the fish circling lazily. "Sometimes. There's a clarity to having limited options. Now, with endless possibilities, it becomes harder to choose what truly matters," she finished. Their eyes met, and Nikolai felt that same unsettling shift, like tectonic plates moving beneath the careful construction of his life. These chance encounters continued at a bookstore, where Freya was giving a presentation on conservation photography, at a coffee shop near Nikolai's office, at a gallery showing Vivienne had to miss due to a client emergency. Each time, their conversations picked up as if uninterrupted, building a connection that increasingly troubled Nikolai. 2 weeks before the wedding, they found themselves alone at Nikolai's penthouse during what was supposed to be a dinner with Vivienne, who had texted at the last minute about a crisis with the wedding flowers. "She doesn't mean to be flaky," Freya said, looking out at the same view Nikolai had contemplated the night of his engagement party. "She just gets caught up in creating perfection." "I know," Nikolai said, joining her at the window. "That's what makes us compatible. We both understand ambition." Freya turned to face him, her expression serious. "Is that enough, though? Compatibility?" The question hung between them, dangerous and unavoidable. "What else should there be?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Connection," Freya said simply. "The feeling that someone sees you, not your achievements or your potential or what you represent, just you. And you think Vivienne doesn't see me?" Freya hesitated. "I think Vivienne sees the perfect completion to her perfect life story. I think she admires and respects you enormously." She paused. "But I don't know if she's ever just sat and watched hummingbirds with you with no agenda." The truth of her words resonated painfully. Before Nikolai could respond, the elevator announced, "Vivienne's arrival! Crisis averted!" she called, striding in with shopping bags. "The florist agreed to the imported peonies after all. Oh, and I picked up those cufflinks you liked, Nikolai." As Vivienne chatted about wedding details, Nikolai caught Freya's gaze across the room, a moment of silent understanding that left him more conflicted than ever. The weight of truth. The rehearsal dinner at the Legion of Honor Museum was everything Vivienne had envisioned. Elegant, impressive, photographed for multiple publications. Nikolai moved through it as if watching himself from a distance, making appropriate remarks, shaking hands, playing his role. Freya was quieter than usual, her maid of honor speech polite but subdued. When their eyes met across the room, she quickly looked away. Later, as guests mingled among the classical sculptures, Nikolai found Vivian in an animated discussion with her wedding planner. She noticed him and excused herself. "Everything's perfect," she said, straightening his tie unnecessarily. "The Times is doing a full feature, and Forbes wants to include us in their Power Couples issue." "Vivian," Nikolai said quietly, "can we talk? Somewhere private." They found an empty gallery. Surrounded by marble figures frozen in eternal poses, Nikolai searched for words. "What's wrong?" Vivian asked, her intuition for problems exceptionally keen. "Is it the seating arrangement? I can have Patricia adjust it if—" "It's not the seating," Nikolai interrupted. "It's us." He took a deep breath. "I don't think we should get married." Vivian's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "What are you talking about? The wedding is in 3 days. Everything's arranged." "I know. And I'm sorry for the timing, but I can't go through with it. Is this cold feet? Because that's normal, Nikolai. Everyone gets nervous. It's not nerves," he said gently. "It's clarity. We make sense on paper, Vivian. We're compatible in all the ways that should matter. But something essential is missing." Her eyes narrowed. "This is about Freya, isn't it?" The question caught him off guard. "What?" "Don't insult my intelligence." Vivian's voice was controlled but tight. "I've seen how you look at her, how you both suddenly go quiet when I enter a room." "Nothing has happened between us," Nikolai said truthfully. "But something's changed in you since she arrived." Vivian's composure cracked slightly. "I always knew she saw the world differently. I never thought her perspective would take you from me." "This isn't about taking sides," Nikolai tried to explain. "It's about recognizing that what we have isn't what either of us truly needs. You deserve someone who loves everything about the life you've built, not someone who's realizing he never really fit into it." A tear slipped down Vivian's cheek, the first he'd ever seen from her. "I do love you, you know. In my way." "I know," he said softly. "And I love you in mine. But not in the way that will make either of us happy in the long run." After a long moment, Vivian straightened her shoulders. "I need to think. And you need to be absolutely certain this is what you want. Because if you call off this wedding, Nikolai, there's no coming back from it." She walked away, dignity intact, leaving Nikolai alone with the silent statues and the weight of his decision. The next morning, he found Freya at the small cafe where they'd first truly talked. Her eyes widened with surprise when he sat across from her. "Vivian told me," she said before he could speak. "About the wedding." "I haven't spoken to her since last night," Nikolai admitted. "She called me at dawn. She's hurt, confused. But I think, underneath it all, not entirely surprised." Freya looked down at her coffee. "She thinks this is because of me." "It's because of me," Nikolai countered. "Because I finally started asking myself the right questions." He paused. "Questions? You helped me see. I never meant to come between you." "You didn't. You just helped me realize what was already missing." He hesitated. "I don't expect anything from you, Freya. That's not why I'm here. I just wanted you to know that whatever happens next, you helped me find a kind of honesty with myself I'd been avoiding for a long time." Freya's amber eyes met his. "What happens next?" "I don't know," Nikolai admitted. "For the first time in decades, I don't have a 5-year plan. And that feels right." Beyond the horizon, 6 months passed. The canceled wedding had created the expected media frenzy, but the storm eventually subsided. Vivian had taken an extended assignment in Paris, reinventing herself as the face of European luxury consulting. Her social media showed her thriving, though neither she nor Nikolai had attempted contact. Nikolai had retreated from public life, focusing on redirecting Vance technologies toward medical and environmental applications. The neural interface, that had once been considered primarily for military use, was now being developed for paralysis patients. He thought of Freya often, but had respected her decision to step back. After the wedding cancellation, she'd taken an assignment in Alaska. "Space to let the dust settle," she'd explained in her brief message. On a foggy San Francisco morning, Nikolai sat in a small conference room with conservation scientists, discussing a new initiative to use his AI systems for wildlife protection. The door opened, and his assistant announced a last-minute addition to the meeting. Freya walked in, her camera bag slung over her shoulder, looking windblown and vibrant. Their eyes met, and time seemed to pause momentarily. "Ms. Bennett will be documenting the pilot project in Indonesia," his assistant explained, oblivious to the current running between them. The meeting proceeded professionally, but afterward, Freya lingered. "You've been busy," she said, gesturing toward the project materials. "This is impressive work." "Different priorities," Nikolai replied. "How was Alaska?" "Cold. Beautiful. Clarifying." She smiled slightly. "I heard about the changes at Advanced Technologies, the medical breakthroughs you're funding. Turns out there are more satisfying things than quarterly profits," he said. "I had a good teacher." They walked to the window overlooking the bay, where the fog was finally lifting. "I got a message from Vivian last week," Freya said. "She's seeing someone new, a French architect who apparently worships the ground she walks on." "Good for her," Nikolai said sincerely. "She deserves that." She also said something interesting. That sometimes people come into our lives not to be our endings but our bridges. Freya turned to face him. "She's wiser than either of us gave her credit for." "She always was brilliant," Nikolai agreed. "Just focused on different priorities." Comfortable silence fell between them, the kind that had always been impossible with Vivian. "I'm leaving for Indonesia next week," Freya finally said. "The orangutan sanctuary needs documentation for their funding proposals." Nikolai nodded, trying to mask his disappointment. "How long will you be gone?" 3 months. Unless... She hesitated. "Unless I had company, someone with technical expertise, who might be interested in seeing how his AI systems could help conservation efforts firsthand." Nikolai studied her face, open, honest, asking but not demanding. "That sounds like a significant time commitment, away from meetings and business obligations." "It is," she agreed. "Probably terrible for the bottom line, but good for other things." Freya's smile deepened those creases he'd come to cherish at the corners of her eyes. "I've found that the most valuable things rarely show up on balance sheets, Nikolai Vance." He thought about the path that had led him here, from ambitious young programmer to billionaire to a man learning, finally, to measure wealth in different ways. "I'll need to make some arrangements," he said. "But I think Vance Technologies can survive without its founder for a while." Outside, the last of the fog burned away, revealing the horizon in all its expansive possibility. Nikolai reached for Freya's hand, not as a practiced gesture for public consumption, but as a first step toward something genuine. "I've never tracked orangutans before," he said. "Don't worry," Freya replied, her fingers intertwining with his. "I know exactly where to look."